Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Pretty Pink Posh is having a fun video hop to celebrate their May 2026 release. They're giving away a $20 gift certificate on each stop, so be sure to leave a comment on my video and the rest of the videos in the hop to qualify to win. The next video on the hop is from Caitlin Anthony, and I do have a link for her video along with the hop information listed in the description box below. Here's a look at the main products I'll be using for my card: the stitched dandelions die set, the rounded stitched rectangles die set, the grass border die, and for a sentiment, the Dandelions Stamp Set. If you're interested in any of the products I use in this video, I will have them linked in the description box below. I used the two largest rounded stitched rectangle dies. For the larger size, I cut this out from some Petite print pattern paper by Doodlebug Design. And for the smaller one, I used some light blue cardstock from my stash. I'll adhere the two rounded rectangles together. And since they have that faux stitch detail, I want to make sure they lay nice and flat, so I'm using two different adhesives: the Deluxe Adhesive Roller from Scrapbook.com and also Barely Art Glue. And I'm focusing the glue more along that outside edge. I did place a large acrylic block on top for some added weight, and I let that sit for about a minute. Now I'll add the rounded rectangles on some white shimmer cardstock, and this cardstock piece is A2 size, 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. And I'll do the same thing, use two different adhesives on the back side since it also has that faux stitch detail along the outside edge. I love using nested shaped dies, and I was super excited to see this new rounded rectangle set from Pretty Pink Posh. After adhering those together, I did place the acrylic block on top again. Now I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base. Next, I'll be adding some grass borders, and I use a light green cardstock from my stash. The grass border die is not new from Pretty Pink Posh, but it's definitely a must-have to create fun scenes. I cut out two of them. I have one that's a little bit taller and then the other is shorter. I first use the grass border die and cut out the piece. Then to get that same rounded border, I use the rounded stitched rectangle die. So they line up perfectly on the light blue rounded rectangle. I'll put glue on the back and adhere both of the grass pieces down. And I'm not putting glue behind the blades of the grass since I want to be able to tuck some of the plants behind it. Now I'll set aside the card and start working on the dandelions. I cut out both the yellow and also the seed dandelion pieces. I'll be inking the edge of the leaves and also the yellow dandelions. I'll start with the leaves. The ink color I'm using is Distress Oxide Rustic Wilderness. I'm inking on a magnetic glass mat from GLASSBOARD Studio, and I'm using one of their MagInk trays to hold the ink pad. Since it's not designed to hold a square ink pad, I have a little fix where I add one of their MiniPawn Magnets above the ink pad. That way I don't have to hold the ink pad while I'm ink blending. I love using glass mats for crafting. They're super easy to clean. Before I add ink to the yellow dandelions, I'll first clean up my glass mat. And I'm simply spraying it with water and wiping it clean and dry with a Crafty cleanup cloth from Scrapbook.com. The ink color I'm using for the dandelions is Distress Oxide Mustard Seed. So it's just a little bit darker than this bright yellow cardstock I'm using for the flowers. There are three different sizes to assemble the yellow dandelion, and I'm inking all three pieces. For the large and middle size, I'm focusing the ink along the outside edge, but for the smallest piece, I'm basically covering it with ink to darken it up just a little bit. So now I'm down to just those three small center pieces. I love all the new dandelion products in Pretty Pink Posh's release. There's the stamp set, the die set, and there's even a background stencil, although I'm not using it in this video. So there are all my die cut pieces inked. I'll clean up my mat, just spray it with water, then wipe it dry. Now it's time to assemble the fun dandelions. They're super easy. Now on the largest layer, it has that fun stitch detail. For the middle layer, it lines up perfectly with that stitch detail. You can rotate it until you find that perfect lineup, or you could adhere it off center so you could see some of that fun stitch detail. For my dandelions, I'm lining up the pieces. And it's the same for that smallest layer. It'll line up perfectly with the stitch detail on the middle layer. I'll be adding 2 large dandelions and 1 smaller. For the smaller one, I'm using the medium and the smallest layer. For my card, I'll also have 2 of the seed dandelions, 1 full and 1 missing 2 of the seeds. The die set also includes a couple of single seeds, so you could have them blowing in the wind. For the center of the 2 seed dandelions, I'm using that same bright yellow cardstock. So there are the 5 flowers assembled. I also cut out 5 stems, 3 long and 2 short. And I'll start by adding the stems, and I am tucking the bottom of the stem behind that little grass border. I'll place the dandelion flower on top, but I'm not adhering them down yet. So on the very left side, I'll start off with a large yellow dandelion, then the smaller yellow dandelion to the right of it. In the very center, I'm doing the seed dandelion, the full flower. Next, I'll add the other large yellow dandelion, and then the partial seed dandelion will go on the very right side. So for the stems, I'm doing the longer stem, a short stem, a long stem, another long stem, and then a short stem on the right side. So there's the main look of the dandelions, and I will be popping up all of the flowers using foam dimension. I'm using large foam squares from scrapbook.com in the 1 millimeter thickness, so it'll add just that little extra dimension. I've adhered the 2 left dandelions, but I'm not adhering the others down yet. I want to add the leaves first, since some of the leaves will be tucked underneath the flowers. For most of the leaves, I am popping up just the very tip, and this time I'm using the small foam squares in the 1 millimeter thickness. Behind the rest of the leaf, I'll use Barely Art Glue. If I want the leaf a little shorter, I am cutting off the very bottom, and you won't see this part since it'll be tucked behind the grass border. There are 2 different leaves on the die set. One tilts a little more right and the other tilts left. So I'm alternating those leaves as I add them to the stems of the dandelions. And I'll add all the leaves before I attach the rest of the flowers. I have so many happy memories from dandelions. I know many people just dread them in their yard, but I never minded them, at least in the backyard. My kids loved when the dandelions turned to seeds, as I'm sure most kids do, blowing on the flower to see all those seeds floating away in the air. I'll add the final leaf. So now I'll add the last 3 dandelions, and I've already removed the release paper from the foam. So there's the fun dandelion field. Very cheerful, reminds me of summer. For a sentiment, I'm adding You're Just Dandy. And I did emboss it using alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. I'll be adding the sentiment on the right side of the card. The left side of the sentiment will be sitting on one of the leaves that I popped up with foam. So to keep it at the same level, I'm adding a scrap piece of cardstock behind the sentiment on the right side. This is some heavyweight cardstock. After adhering that cardstock piece, I'll put glue on the back and attach the sentiment. Before that glue dries completely, I'll make sure it's on nice and straight. So there is my finished card, and I love how it turned out. The new dandelion products from Pretty Pink Posh are so fun. Be sure to check out the rest of the release since there are so many amazing products. Now head over to Caitlin Anthony's video for more inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.